All right, starting off with the first slide. I see you got, I'm just curious from my YouTube banner. That's cool.
I wanted to make sure we branded these robotaxis with your channel because maybe one
Love
day
it.
you'll have a fleet of them yourself.
Oh man, if honestly, I've been thinking about it. I mean, I'm gonna wait until August 8th to see what the idea and what the plan is. Let's see what happens. But this is cool. Thanks a lot for that. So starting off with the first slide. So
The thing to take away from this today, if you look at Tesla's business, they are in the business of making and selling EVs. How much do they make when they sell an EV? Well, that's fluctuated over time. This goes back to Q3 of 2018. And you can see that that was the high watermark in terms of their gross profit per vehicle. $15,808 in that quarter. And their low watermark happened to be just a couple of quarters later, $7,087. I guess it's, sorry, 2 quarters ago, it was $7,006, those two red bars. So
yeah.
it's fluctuated between $7,000 and $15,000 per vehicle delivered, excluding regulatory credits and excluding leases.
Oh, okay. I see.
So
It
that's
did.
not a bad business. I mean, making that kind of money selling automobiles isn't so bad. But if we contrast that with how much money we think they could make on the robotaxi, and by the way, this revenue you see on this chart is like a one-time thing, right? They sell a vehicle. This is the revenue
Yeah.
they get on a one-time basis. With Robotaxi, they have the opportunity to earn recurring revenue. And if you go to the next page, there's a few different models we can look at. The fleet operator model, where companies buy massive fleets of vehicles. Think about a car rental company or even an Uber operating, a massive robotaxi fleet. In Europe, Mr. Green has a fleet of 4,500 Teslas. So that would be that category. You and I would be in the individual owner category with our personal car, or perhaps if we buy a few of them. And then there's the Tesla only model. And I believe that we'll see a blend of all three of these. So
Wow.
today, in
Okay.
most of these charts, we'll focus just on the Tesla only model. But if you go to the next page, I just want to kind of contrast and highlight all three of them. The green bars on the left are that first chart we showed where Tesla can make between $7,000 to $15,000 on a gross profit basis. Let's say that's $5,000 to $10,000 on a net basis after taxes and so on. So that's not bad. But when it comes to robotaxi, depending on whether it's a fleet operator or individual owner or Tesla, you can see the numbers are quite a bit higher. Now,
Yeah.
we don't know for sure what these numbers are going to be. We haven't seen the model yet, and it certainly depends on per mile pricing and things like that. But you can see that there's a significant difference in the revenue or the profit potential for Tesla to operate a robotaxi network than it is just to sell vehicles.
Yeah. Oh, it's a big difference.
And
So
even
this,
if it's the lower one, and this is, by the way, looking at over a 5-year period. So when you buy an EV, let's say you buy one, every 5 years. For a lot of people, it's going to be a lot longer than that.
yeah.
So Tesla might make $5,000 to $10,000 over a 5-year period, but with robotaxi, they'd probably make at least $50,000 per vehicle over a 5-year period.
Wow.
So
this
massive.
yellow, sorry, no, this yellow bar is for 5 years, right?
Both bars are 5 years. The red bars are kind of the low utilization scenarios, and the yellow bars are the higher utilization scenarios.
Okay. I see.
Utilization is a really important concept in robotaxi because the more the cars are being utilized, the more hours of the day they're being put in the network to generate revenue. That allows Tesla to make more money per vehicle.
Wow, that's
Right?
insane.
If your vehicle is only operating a couple hours a day, then you don't have much opportunity to make money. But if it's operating 15 hours a day, you've got a lot more opportunity to make money on it.
Yeah, look, the Tesla only, that's crazy. Almost 300 grand. That's insane.
Potentially, depending on pricing.
Yeah.
And of course, over time, the pricing will come way down. So these numbers on here are not the numbers I expect, in 2050, for example. These numbers might be more in the near term in the first couple of 3 years of running the network. Okay.
Yeah.
So the profit opportunity per vehicle will go down over time, but that's okay because there'll be more and more vehicles put in the network over time, and so that the total profits, even though the profit per vehicle comes down, the total profits can grow quite rapidly as more vehicles are added.
That's interesting. Okay, let's go on to the next chart. We have the usage scenarios.
Yeah, so this is kind of looking at utilization and understanding what that really means. So we talk about 30% utilization. That means that the vehicle is placed in service for 7.2 hours a day. Now, that doesn't mean that for all 7.2 hours that the vehicle is actually generating revenue. There could be some amount of time where the vehicle is moving from one location where it dropped off somebody to another location where it's picking up somebody. It's not earning revenue for that. But that still counts as part of the 30%. So this is just how many hours a day is the vehicle in the Robotaxi network. So I've shown here between 30% utilization to 65, that's 7 to over 15 hours a day.
And that 15 hours a day would be the guy who would potentially do the thing as a full-time, like have the fleet going around as a full-time.
Yeah, that's more likely to be Tesla's own vehicles, a professionally operated fleet management company, or your vehicle if you were away on vacation for, let's say, a week. You might put your vehicle in there full-time. Now, as we'll see in a minute, even the black section of the chart where the vehicle is not in the network earning revenue, there's still an opportunity to potentially earn revenue from the vehicle. And that's through AI inference, where you can use the computer in the car to generate, to use it for an AI inference tool. Elon has talked about that. We don't know yet much about what the economics of that looks like, but collectively, all of Tesla's vehicles would be a very powerful AI inference supercomputer, essentially.
Yeah, see this part. Now he did mention this in the shareholder meeting, and I'm just like, this part, like, I don't even understand that. Like, do they become like computers to solving AI problems? Like, is that what they become? Is that what it means by like inference compute? Because personally, I don't really understand that.
Yeah, if you think about the computer in the car, so when it's driving autonomously, it's basically doing inference compute in the vehicle real time to drive itself, right? So it's a very powerful computer system in order to do that. The FSD model basically is in the car, and it's using that computer to drive. So the idea is, why can't you use all that computing power when the car is not driving and apply that inference compute to some other AI problem?
Okay.
And it would be something that's not time critical, because the car may suddenly be put in use. And so it might be like a drug discovery kind of AI problem or something like that, where you just needed a lot of inference over time.
That's interesting. Okay, let's go on to the next slide.
Okay, so this is looking at per different utilization rates, number of trips per day, and potentially the number of miles driven, given a set of assumptions. Okay, so at 30% utilization, you might get 20 trips out of the vehicle in a day, right? And the vehicle might travel 160 some miles. At 65% utilization, you might get 40 to 43 trips, and the vehicle might travel 350 miles a day. Now, even at 65%, there's still time to charge the vehicle, right? So it's not like charging really is going to be an issue. The biggest issue that you have with the Robotaxi network is that there's peaks and valleys in the day in terms of demand, right? Morning rush hour, afternoon, evening rush hour. So you've got to make sure that there's certain slack built into the system to handle those peak times. And you would want to make sure that any vehicles available during those peak times have enough charge to be able to provide rides throughout the peak period, because that's where you're going to make most of the money, not at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's true.
So just wanted to put some numbers on, how many trips it's likely to deliver. Now, it depends again on what kind of market you're in. If you're in a big city where the trips might be really short versus maybe a smaller town where the trips could be longer, or a rural area where the trips could be really long. So these are just kind of averages for the whole network.
I see. And you're doing, each trip should be around 8 miles, right? For the first one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'll show you in a second and subsequent slides.
Okay. Next slide. There we go. Perfect.
So this one's kind of a breakdown of the revenue. So I'm looking at the fare kind of as a base fare. So if you get an Uber today or a taxi, you get charged just to step into the vehicle, right?
Okay.
The base fare.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And that base fare may change depending on how far the vehicle has traveled to come pick you up, or the time of day, depending on, how much demand there is. But most of the fare is going to be based on distance traveled. If you travel a long distance, then you're in the vehicle for a long time, and therefore you should pay more. And then the other factor that I thought of is idle time. If you're in an autonomous vehicle and you fall asleep, how are they going to charge you? Because they can't really kick you out. I mean, they could try. I guess they could play loud music and try to wake you up. But if you're not sober and you pass out drunk, you're going to have to sleep it off, which ultimately is fine, because you want people to be in a safe place in that case, right?
Yeah.
But you would just charge them for the time that they're still in the vehicle. So that's that white bar in terms of the idle time fare. I think that would likely be a third component to the fare, is just how much time you're just sitting in there, even if the vehicle's not traveling.
Yeah, and that would make sense. I would reckon in the future with a Robotaxi, I'm sure there'll be a option where you can, like, okay, pick up my friend as well, and then maybe once you get to your friend's place, he may take, or she may take, if it's a she, it may take half an hour to get ready. So that should go under idle time.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually a cool chart.
And then the other thing is, so the blue bars on this chart are the other bars on the previous chart with the 3 different breakdowns. That's the trips revenue, right? As we just saw, is made up of 3 components.
1, 2, 3, yeah.
Yeah. And that's just the solid blue in this chart. And then what I'm saying is on top of that, there's also potential for revenue from advertising.
Okay, I see this.
Either in the vehicle or wrapped around the outside, right? I'm just curious around the outside of the car. Right?
Oh, okay.
So you get advertising revenue for that wrap. Now, in that case, if you own the car, you would get to keep that revenue yourself. You wouldn't share that with Tesla, but any advertising within the car, you might share with Tesla.
Wow, that's actually really clever. I never actually thought about that. Like, because you see, if you look at buses, it's a transportation. They always have advertisements on them. So having your Robotaxi or your car that has advertised around based on whatever company that wants to do it, I never even thought about that. That's crazy.
And you know what's a great vehicle for that is the Cybertruck. It's a billboard.
That's a billboard. Oh, right. Yeah.
Another revenue opportunity is what I'm calling curated experiences. Let's say I travel to a new city and I want a kind of a guided tour. The car can act as my tour guide. The car can speak to me and tell me the historical importance of what we're driving past. Wow. I can talk to the car and say, hey, I'm hungry. Can you take me to the best restaurant in the city that serves, Vietnamese food? And it would take me there. And maybe the restaurant would pay Tesla for that service.
Yes. So like how Google Maps does it.
Exactly. Wow. So there's that. Also entertainment and connectivity. If you want high-speed internet in the car, you want to play video games, some other entertainment services could be delivered via the vehicle. And then finally, the yellow bar is the distributed inference revenue that you and I talked about earlier. As the car is not in motion, if it's just sitting, it could still potentially make some money. Now, all these other revenue sources in my model, I've made them really small. I don't yet know what these will look like, but I know that they could be there. So you can see these lines are very small slivers in this chart. So my model, they're not a big deal at all, but they could be.
They add up, right? I mean, like, for example, like the curated experiences, entertainment and connectivity. Before you know it, you're probably paying what, 50 cents, 75 cents per mile driven, plus the base fare. But that's not all you're going to be spending in the car. If you want entertainment, you want to watch Netflix or something. I mean, you got to pay for all that. So the customer ends up paying a whole lot more. That's just crazy. Like when you get too deep into it, the numbers just get even crazier. That's insane. That was really cool. The advertising, I did not think of that at all. The curated experiences, that was cool. And the entertainment connectivity, yeah, that's nice.
The curated experiences also too could be food in the vehicle. There could be, like in a hotel, there's a mini fridge, mini bar. That could be something like that in the vehicle. You're right. It's right there. Yeah.
But imagine the endless ideas what companies will do once they have such a thing. Like imagine like you're a hotel, you have a Robotaxi, you have a guest coming, you just send the Robotaxi to the guy at the airport, verify him somehow through one of the software that it's him. Then it comes, and then while he comes, there's like the fridge and other services in the car that he can take that he has to pay for, and then there's entertainment, and then it's a whole different world. This is crazy.
The other thing too that's not on here at all is using the vehicle as a delivery service. So it's not carrying passengers, but maybe in the downtime it's moving, goods around, whether it's groceries to somebody's house or just packages for whoever. Any business, I guess, could maybe use the fleet to move certain things around. So there's other opportunities like that too that are not modeled here.
Yeah, no, you mentioned that. I have seen Domino's do that with no driver. I don't know who it was using it, but I've seen Domino's delivering food through a vehicle with nobody in it, like driverless. Sure. It's crazy.
Yep. So here are the assumptions, and this is just the Tesla only version. I have the same slides for the other two models, but just for brevity today, just wanted to go over the Tesla only one. And so my assumption is 25 miles average speed of travel. The average trip length is 5 miles. The amount of empty miles is 40%. So that's the amount that if you drop somebody off and then have to pick somebody up, how far the vehicle is going, 40% of the total miles traveled in a day are empty, therefore not getting any revenue for those. That may be high, may be low, depending on where you are. I'm assuming that the average loading and unloading time is about 2 minutes. And I'm assuming that in this case, because it's Tesla only, their share of the network revenue is 100%. They're not sharing it with anybody. I'm assuming the vehicle, the battery life is about 600,000 miles. Tesla does not need to pay FSD subscription to itself. And then I'm looking at utilization rates that range between 30 and 65%, as we saw in the previous charts. And my base fare is $1.50. The cost per mile is $1, and the cost per minute of idle time works out to 42 cents. And that's just a function of the average speed and how far the vehicle would go in an hour, or how much it would cost per mile if it was traveling It works out to 42 cents.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
So Tesla's indifferent as to whether you actually go anywhere in the car or not, right? Just sitting in there, they're going to earn the same revenue as it would if it was moving. This chart shows the revenue.
Okay.
Right,
Nice.
under each of those assumptions per year.
I see.
So it ranges between $62,000 per vehicle per year at 30% utilization up to $128,000 per vehicle per year at 65% utilization. There's something interesting here because it looks like the higher the utilization, the better. And that is true. But you run the risk if you're utilizing the vehicles too much. When people go to call the car, they have to wait too long. So you actually want to build a decent amount of slack into the system so that when you call a car, it is there as fast as it can be. I've run the numbers, and if Tesla is running the network on their own, they actually want to have fairly low utilization if they're trying to maximize customer satisfaction. And it actually doesn't hurt them that much because more customer satisfaction would be more usage, and therefore the total revenue actually would be higher overall than if they just had fewer cars at higher utilization. It's a little bit counterintuitive. They don't necessarily want to run this thing at the highest utilization possible. You and I, as individual owners, if we put it into the network, we want a high utilization.
Yeah.
We don't want our car sitting around unless the distributed inference opportunity is huge. I don't think so. I think it'll be modest. But Tesla might have to say, you know what, even though you put your individual car in there, we're going to give you an average revenue of everybody that puts their car in this particular area. And that way they can optimize the network for the customers and not for the owners of the vehicles, right? Because there's a bit of a conflict of interest between what the owners want, high utilization, and what a rider would want. They want a vehicle now.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Anyway, the revenue opportunity you can see here is huge.
It's massive.
To $128,000 per vehicle.
If you're just going to make, well, this is for Tesla only, but 62,000 per each Robotaxi. That's, at this point, if this is what's going to happen, selling the vehicle, well, no, this is only Tesla. They're not going to be selling the vehicle. So never mind. So that's insane. That's crazy. Wow.
And this is the other thing too. You may have heard people say Tesla should stop selling vehicles. Well, this is why. They should keep them for themselves, put them in their own network, and so on. I think Tesla is likely to have a hybrid model where there's a good portion of the vehicles in the network that are their own, and they do that to try to maintain a balance of utilization and customer experience versus individually owned vehicles. Or if there's a particular market where not many individuals are willing to put their vehicles in the network, Tesla can supplement that to the point that they need to in order to have a good customer experience. So that's why I think there'll be a blend of Tesla only and individual owned or fleet owned vehicles.
In the beginning, I think it'll just be Tesla by themselves to test it out, geofence in some areas, then they can exponentially grow. Once they know that FSE is good to go, they'll slowly add fleet owners with good records into the fleet, and then they'll just get better and better year after year.
Yeah, I think that's highly likely too. Although I would say the one thing counter to that is most of the vehicles today are in individual hands.
Yes.
So if they wanted to accelerate the deployment of the network at all, then using more individually owned vehicles would make sense. But we'll see. We'll see how quickly they roll this out. It may be a slow rollout.
Yeah, I'm expecting a slow rollout, and then we'll see.
Yeah, there's definitely some kinks to work out and so on, right? There's some issues that they'll need to figure out. Yep. So this page shows how it looks from a net profit and net margin perspective. The previous chart with the red was the revenue. This is factoring in the cost of running the network, and I've got a whole list of stuff that I won't bore you with here in terms of what the costs are. But we're looking at net profit of about $25,000 per vehicle, up to potentially $57,000 per vehicle, and net margins in the low 40s. So a pretty attractive business model for Robotaxi.
Okay. And I think the next slide will be this is the mile per hour. Okay.
Yeah, so let's now look at what this might look like at scale. We were looking at $1 per mile, which is the series of bars on the left. Sorry, the dollar per mile is the red bars. And then on this chart, I'm showing you what it looks like at 90 cents, 80, 70, 60, and so on down to 30 cents a mile. So of course, if you charge less per mile, then the profit opportunity comes down. But what I wanted to show here then, as you add vehicles to the network, 10 million, 20 million, 30, and 100 million, what the net income opportunity is at different per mile rates. So while the network maybe the first 10 million cars are priced at $1 per mile, and then maybe at 20 million, it's now 90 cents. And at 30 million, it's now 70 cents. And by the time you get to 100 million, now at 30 cents a mile. In that case, you're looking at the green bar. So you're looking at potentially, if we allow ourselves to dream, if there's 100 million vehicles in the fleet, Tesla could be making $1 trillion a year in profit. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about. Apple, which is one of the biggest market cap companies in the world, has 400 billion of revenue per year. We're talking about $1 trillion of profit per year on Robotaxi, potentially at a fleet size of 100 million.
That's crazy. You know, if you even just think about it, if you have 100 million robotaxis on the road, I mean, what's the point of buying a vehicle at that point? You just get into a robotaxi and go. If the cost per mile is 30 cents at that time, even if it's as high as, you know, let's say even $1, which I don't think that's realistic, but let's just even say that. Why buy a car when you can just travel practically almost, I don't want to say free, but cheaper than a bus fare.
It disrupts so many different things.
It's ridiculous.
Right? Public transportation, vehicle ownership, and if your company motto or your company goal is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy,
exactly.
What better way to do that? So
And this,
Tesla is highly driven to reduce the cost per mile of the robotaxi network over time. It absolutely will destroy vehicle ownership if you get down to those kinds of per mile rates.
Yeah, there's no other way of, I mean, I can't come out with any other outcome. It's either you have the software. I mean, if you're another automaker, it's either you have the software and part of the robotaxi era, or good luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only way I see this going down.
This is a way to look at those profit numbers on the previous page, and applying, I used a PE of 30 to it, and what the market value potential could be at different rates. So let's ignore the red line. That's $1 per mile. That's not going to be the case when you get to 100 million. Let's say it's the green line. Let's say it's only 30 cents per mile. Okay. That gets you to a $31 trillion market value just for Robotaxi if they get to 100 million vehicles. Okay.
That's crazy.
Let's say it's only 50 million vehicles, then that's 15 trillion of market value. Let's say it's only 10 million vehicles. That's 3 trillion of market value. 3 trillion is equal to the market cap today of Microsoft, Nvidia, or Apple, roughly. So it would put Tesla in that league just on the robotaxi business alone, with 10 million vehicles earning 30 cents a mile. Okay.
You know, this is kind of like, this reminds me of ARC's robotaxi model when they just released it a week ago, saying that if they didn't say how many vehicles, but they were estimating 2029 for them to reach like 900 or 600 billion in just profits of just robotaxis, which is around here, which is just insane, which is around the same market cap here, around 6.2, or I think it was 7 to 10 trillion. So in between 20 to 30 million vehicles, if it's 30 cents per mile. So that's crazy.
Yeah. And we might get 30 cents a mile, and might go even lower than that. So I'm not suggesting that, you know, these are the numbers. I'm just showing an illustration of what the numbers would be given certain assumptions. And I'm humble enough to say, I don't know. I'm just presenting the numbers in different ways so that people can look at it and say, oh, here's what I think. Oh, there it is on the chart. Okay, I get it.
Right.
I'm not trying to suggest that Tesla is worth $90 trillion if they get to 100 million vehicles at $1 a mile. I don't think that's realistic, right?
And guys, please, this is not financial advice. This is just a way of thinking how robotaxi could work. Just an idea. And it's just scale, right? Once you can scale this thing, that's all that you need to just exponentially grow, even at the lowest. It's when you look at the model, it's insane. It's like one of those things you look at 100 years ago and you say that, really, in 100 years time, this is what's going to happen. It's kind of like the same model a little bit.
Yeah, and I think this will happen a lot quicker than most people realize. Like a lot of things in technology with the exponential curves, it feels like maybe a slow launch, but then it happens very quickly. These charts, I think we can probably skip over. I'm just looking at different cost per mile as the utilization goes up. I think we've effectively discussed that. If you want to go to the next page, this just shows the revenue per mile versus the cost per mile. And so if you go from $1 per mile at 30% utilization, the cost per mile might be 31 cents. And if you get out to the right side where it's 45 cents per mile at 65% utilization, your cost only goes down to 23 cents. So, you know, depending on what your assumptions are for the various costs, I think this is kind of the ballpark of what we're looking at in terms of what the cost per mile is for the service. So it would be pretty hard to offer too much below, 30 cents a mile and still make money. Now, there's base fares, there's advertising revenue, there's all kinds of other revenues you could layer on top of this that potentially allow you to offer a lower cost per mile rate, because you're making money from other things, right? Advertising, food, curated experience, inference, etc. Okay.
No, this is interesting.
And then this is just gross profit per mile as it would come down per vehicle per mile as the price declines. Anyway, I think we can skip that. The next one we can skip.
Oh, this is just both together. Okay.
Too repetitive. Yeah, this is just shows that the profit margin actually pretty stable under these assumptions, even though the cost is coming down.
Okay.
Okay, still pretty attractive. And then this shows the net income potential in these various scenarios. Far right side, 100 million vehicles in the fleet. You're looking at potentially, $2.5 trillion of net income given this set of assumptions. And again, I'm not suggesting that that's what it will be, but I'm just sort of showing you, given the assumptions, here's how the math works out. And then this one finally is just applying the PE ratio to the different scenarios. And actually all the lines are pretty much on top of each other.
Oh, okay, I see.
With the $1 per mile actually being the lowest market value. And as you get out to the 45 cents a mile, the market value actually slightly higher because the utilization is higher. So utilization is key in terms of maximizing the profit per vehicle. But as I mentioned earlier, utilization is something that Tesla needs to optimize for and not necessarily get the highest utilization. They need to make sure the customer experience is great. Because if you and I are going to ditch our personal cars, we need to know that when we call up a Robotaxi, it's going to be there quickly.
Oh yeah, 100% reliable on that.
Yeah, so that's going to be key if Tesla wants to displace vehicle ownership one day.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. And then this is just the market value with the 30 PE. I mean, the numbers just get crazy.
They're nutty. They're nutty.
Yeah, they get crazy. It's just Robotaxi.
Yeah. So here's an application that I think is worth talking about. If you have a Tesla, before FSD becomes a Robotaxi service, your car is like any other car. It's just a depreciating machine. But the minute the Robotaxi is turned on, your car now, potentially, if you want it to be, is a money-making machine. And so I'm suggesting that the value of Teslas, used FSD-capable vehicles, whether or not you have FSD installed on your car or not, the value of your Tesla goes up.
Yeah.
Because it is now capable of producing a whole bunch of money. So a lot of people are not recognizing this, right? And again, it doesn't matter whether you've already paid for FSD. As long as your vehicle is FSD capable, you could see a value increase. So this will be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah. So that would mean the vehicle, but then that would mean the main selling point here would be the software, though, because that's what's going to be running the full self-driving, the autonomy and stuff.
Yeah.
So it'll be the software that would increase the value of the car.
That's right. But as long as the car is FSD software capable, then Tesla may say, hey, I know you didn't buy FSD. I know you don't subscribe to FSD. But hey, we will let you put it in our network. You're going to pay us more because you didn't buy the software, but you can still make money from your car. So effectively, your car is a money-making machine, even though you've not paid for the software. Because Tesla might want to incentivize as many people as possible to include their vehicles in the network. Okay? And then even if you and I don't want to do it, somebody could come knocking on our door and say, hey, I see you've got a Tesla parked in your driveway.
Yeah.
I will buy it for this much. And this is my attempt here at showing what the increase could be. And I apologize for the spreadsheet. There's a lot of numbers here. And maybe we just skip to the next chart.
Okay.
That shows that the value, depending on what the utilization is, at 30% utilization, if that car is only used in the network for one more year, it's a 30% increase in the value of your car. If you get 5 more years of life out of it, the value of the car doubles in value on a present value basis. So if you think today your car is worth $25,000, in a Robotaxi world, if it lasts for 5 years, it's actually worth $50,000 to somebody. These are the numbers that I'm talking about in terms of how much your car could increase in value when the Robotaxi network goes live. If the utilization of the vehicle is higher, then the vehicle value goes up as well. That's the blue bars. So if your used Tesla is good for 5 more years in a Robotaxi network, it could go up by double in price or go up by 150%, depending on utilization assumptions. And I'm only using 30 and 40% here, which is at the low end, right? That's like 7 to maybe 9 hours a day of service.
The days that cars become, appreciated assets is going to be a crazy day.
Yeah.
Wow.
And actually on the next page actually just shows the numbers. So if the vehicle was currently valued at $32,000 here, depending on how many more years of service you can get from it, here's how much it would be worth in present value terms today. Okay. So if it lasted 8 more years, the car could be worth, $76,000 to $96,000.
What a world that'll be.
Yeah. So don't make the mistake of selling your Tesla for whatever reason today if it's FSD capable. Hang on to it for a bit.
Oh yeah, especially with the new versions coming out. I mean, we're almost there. I mean, we're getting so close to it.
Yeah. Now, this is part of a whole presentation and slide deck I did in a post on X. I just want to highlight 3 robotaxi implications, because it's not only going to change, the cost of transportation and that kind of thing. And we've talked about some of the implications, but if you go to the next page, the amount of accidents and road deaths that we have, and this is just US numbers, it's equivalent to 200 plus Boeing 737s crashing every year.
Okay.
And as a society, we seem to be okay with this.
Yeah.
Right? And what I'm saying is, if you now have a way to avoid this, then I think society starts to change and starts to say, you know what, humans should not be allowed to drive vehicles. Now, I'm not suggesting that humans are going to get banned, but I think we may start to see robotaxi-only lanes, robotaxi-only roads, or potentially certain only times a day when robotaxis are allowed versus human drivers. And the human drivers get pushed gradually to the edges because they're dangerous.
Yeah.
And so this is a societal change, I think, that's coming.
Well, yeah, if you can reduce the deaths and accidents by like 10 times,
Yeah.
I think, it already is, I think 5-6 times, but if this full self-driving thing keeps improving, getting better, and getting to the point where this thing can drive 10 times, 20 times, 30 times better than a human and avoid this many deaths, I think it'll just become a norm at that time to like, no, hey, you know what? The dangerous drivers are now human.
Right. It's a bit
That's
like
a good
the
point.
shift that society had towards cigarette smoking. It's a similar kind of societal shift. It goes from being accepted to generally unaccepted, and smokers were kind of pushed to the margins and said, okay, you can't smoke on airplanes anymore, you can't smoke here, you can't smoke indoors, whatever. Same kind of thing. They just kind of get pushed off because it's behavior that society's decided that they don't want anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one example. The other implication is gas stations. We are going to see the extinction of gas stations, and in a robotaxi world, that extinction happens rapidly.
I mean, I've noticed in Toronto, some gas stations, they have added both gas stations and, the fuel and chargers. Like they had both, which was interesting to me. When I was, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, when I was there, I saw both there. I'm like, you can charge here and fuel up here if you want. It was a pretty interesting concept. Maybe in the future, gas stations will turn into EV stations.
Maybe. Now, in some countries like Norway, for example, I think that's been a pretty successful transition.
Okay.
But Norwegian gas stations have some really good food options, and their bathrooms are clean. In the United States, a lot of gas stations are not known for their food or clean bathrooms. The business model of the gas stations have to change. They have to adapt. They have to provide, since EV owners are going to be there for more than 5 minutes, they have to provide a nice environment for them to want to go there. That's right. It's not just providing a charger, it's providing the other services that people want. So it's an opportunity and a threat to gas stations. Also, location matters. Because if I'm charging my car at home, I'm not going to be charging at the gas station down the street. Whereas before, that gas station was very convenient for me. Now it's not needed, right?
Okay.
But a gas station on a route heavily traveled for long distance, having a charger, EV charger, that might make more sense because I will need that, right? But the one around the corner from my house, I don't need to go there anymore because I'm charging at home.
Charging at home, yeah.
So,
and I would reckon apartment buildings will also add in superchargers if EVs are going to be, when they are going to be the thing. I would reckon that some parking lots will have charging stations, so they don't have to.
But since we're talking about robotaxi, apartment goers aren't maybe not going to have their own EVs anymore, right? They're just going to use it as a service. So
true.
We've got like a transition and then another transition on top of that right away, right? And if you go to the next slide, actually, speaking of parking, this is a great video about how the parking laws in the United States came about from Climate Town. But we won't need as much parking anymore because if robotaxis are just picking people up and dropping them off, they're constantly moving. They're not just sitting idle anymore. We don't need as much parking. And the U.S. has paved over the state of Connecticut basically in parking. Right.
Yeah. And as we spoke earlier, if you have a lot of robotaxis on the road, it eliminates the ownership of having a car. Then you're going to have a lot of parking lots that are just useless. They can be used as buildings or other things that can be useful.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, that was cool.
So there are a lot of other implications that I've discussed in various posts on X. If you're interested, I mean, here's kind of a summary of some of them. There are a lot of implications, and I'm sure I've missed a bunch as well. But this is profound in terms of moving to an autonomous transportation world.
The disruptions are crazy.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. The disruptions is crazy.
Yeah. Now, as excited as I am about robotaxi, and I am very excited about robotaxi, it doesn't hold a candle to the next topic of discussion.